So today, we're going to talk about cross-platform tracking. So a lot of people talk to me about, hey, Sean, what's best for me? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram? Is it Twitter? Is it where do I go play? What's going to be the most effective? Today, I'm going to share exactly how you can do that in one click. All right, guys, today we are going to talk about how to identify gaps and optimize your targeting strategy in one click. Most of the time, if you're searching for a market gap, it can feel like Kim Jong-un from all the way across the entire world on the other side of Earth. And so we want to talk about cross-platform tracking today, which is cool. It's our second of 4 weeks session that we're doing here on attrition and tracking. So today's outcome, there's 3 of them. Number 1, we want to be able to find hidden fans. You got to discover who you're not reaching on each platform. New audiences equal new opportunities. Secondly, we want to ditch the duds. Stop wasting money on platforms that don't convert for you. And money, or stop wasting money, could be money, time, or energy. We need to focus on where your ideal clients hang out. And lastly, we want to laser focus on targeting, tailoring your message to the perfect audience on the perfect platform. Boom, maximum impact. Your challenge today is I'm going to challenge you to take 1 step back so that you can take 2 steps forward, right? That's kind of going to be the big thing. So we might have to slow down some of the mindset and the things that we're doing just a little bit, take 1 little step backwards, and then we'll be able to springboard forward. Okay. The second challenge is this. The stuff I'm sharing with you is hyper powerful, but you are going to need to be consistent with it. And as people always ask me, like, Sean, what does it take to be, a sales professional, one of the best in the world? I typically say there's not one thing, there's 3. Number 1 is conviction, which you should have about your offer, your product, or your service. If you don't, come talk to me and Chris about that. Number 2 should be consistency. You got to continue doing the thing. And then number 3 is persistency. No, there's going to be challenges. No, you're going to get knocked down. But if you can see up, you better get up and let's keep moving forward. So that's your challenge today, is being consistent and making sure you're okay to take kind of 1 step back to move 2 steps forward. Let's pretend we're going on a road trip. Yeah, let's do it. Woo! This is going to be amazing, right? So on your road trip, you're so freaking excited because you're thinking about, oh man, getting out on the road, feeling the wind in your hair, and like you get to see the places, and you go meet the people and do the things, like where you're going to the beach, you're doing whatever, right? And so we, first of all, when we do plan a road trip, usually we're going to say, here's the destination. So think about the last road trip that you guys took. What was the destination? Did you map that out or plan it out before you go? So the first thing is we spend a little bit of time designing and planning where we're headed. That's absolutely important. Secondly, we need to think about all the stuff we want. So let's talk about all the snacks. We put snacks in our bag, whatever they are, hopefully healthier ones than the ones you see on the screen, but these are all delicious. And then we talk about, oh, what clothing do I need to bring? So say you pack up all the snacks, all the clothing, and all the music that you need for this road trip that you're about to take. And you're so hyped about it. You have your destination, you're pumped to go get with your best friends. And then you get off and you're running on your road trip. You're off in the road and you're driving down, and you're riding, the music's blasting, you're crushing snacks, having a great time with friends. And all of a sudden you're like, we just ran out of gas. Shit. Well, what happened? Right? Now what? You're in the middle of nowhere. You and your buddies are in this car and you're like, what the hell just happened? We're completely out of gas. How did we overlook this one thing? We weren't paying attention. What the heck? Frustration starts to build. You get angry. You start getting really down each other's throats, and it just turns ugly. And you're like, why did we even do this road trip? It was a stupid idea. Like, just ruined the whole thing. Next thing you know, you are sitting there by your car and you're like, well, somebody's going to have to go hitchhike to go find some gas for us. And then say, 1 or 2 of your friends get in the car and they go hitchhike. Now you're freaking out because you're like, oh man, I hope they don't get abducted or something worse. That could be insane. And you're out in the middle of nowhere. Or you call AAA and wait for hours for them to show up, whatever. But you're here and you're stuck. Well, the question is, what happened? The idea is we had attention on the wrong thing. We were too worried about the destination and the snacks and the clothes and like getting with our buddies and doing this road trip. And we overlooked one of the most important things that we could do is, like, you got to put fuel in the vehicle to get to where you're trying to go. So the key is check yourself before you wreck yourself, really, is what it comes down to. And when it comes to your business and social media, one of the things that we always need to stay hyper focused on is where the biggest opportunity is for us. So like if we're using this analogy of a road trip and we look at this and we can see instantly, like if we have a way to spot check that Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever each platform, if you know where the majority of your dollars are coming from, don't do this. Don't put your energy into the bucket that's not producing the most dollars. Rather, do this. Put the energy where it needs to be. Same concept, right? If you're going in a road trip, you don't really necessarily need the snacks and the clothes, but you do need the gas to get there. And so the idea is to stay focused on the place or the platform that's bringing you the biggest revenue. Really, really simple and easy to remember that. So the question becomes, how do you split test social media platforms using FlowChat? And I'm glad that you asked, because we're going to show you custom reporting in 3 steps, right? Step number 1 is called the setup, right? So I'm going to walk through this really quick. I'm going to share. A second step is optimizing. Third step is doing a quick review. So in your account, if you go into your account, you click that button that says reports. There's 2 main reports that I want to cover, but we're going to really focus today on the custom pipeline report. So I'm just going to share the pipeline activity report that you see there is a very granular, in the weeds, down to the very last, very detailed type of reporting. This is the type of report that will show you how many people were put into your pipeline in the beginning, how many were moved over by day, who were those people. You can click and drill down into each of their cards and some other things like this. This report is powerful when you have a team that's running the system for you and you can go and check. So it's more of a check system. The custom pipeline report, on the other hand, is that fuel tank, is that opportunity for you to look and see in one snapshot, is LinkedIn better than Facebook? Is TikTok better than, Instagram, whatever? And you can see that. The second thing you can also do, probably more importantly, is actually optimize your messaging flow. So there's a couple of things we want to do. So to set this up, you just go to reports in your account, top of the screen, click on reports, click on custom pipeline reports. It's going to open to a screen like this. On the right-hand side, it might be blank. You probably won't have these pretty red and blue colors, but on the right-hand side where it says LinkedIn template, or sorry, there's a little drop down there with the arrow that's going up. You want to click that drop down, choose the pipelines that you want to track against. In this case, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, we can determine which one of these things we're tracking. So if you're running on multiple platforms, this is easy to tell where the big results are coming from. And then you just hit add and they all appear. Once we have that set up, we add these KPIs, right? To do this, Chris was just sharing about this a second ago, but to do this, you just click on that little add KPI box, and then you have a couple of choices. I'm not going to go deep into that. There's other trainings that we have on that. But the idea here is you want to set up 2 things, actually 3 things. The first thing is going to be very simply our initial messages sent. We need to know, right? When you're setting up any pipeline, there's always some big hinge points that we talk about. The initial messages sent. Now, initial messages sent are going to be designed from after somebody is already pre-qualified. So we know that when we add people to a pipeline and we look through that person's profile, we make sure they hit the 4 Qs, and then we put them into the qualified, and then we send the first message. So this is real, the right people. We're starting with like testing the right messages to get the right results. So this also gives you a way to measure accountability and consistency, because in our report here, you can pull up any date range and you can look and see, hey, did I send 20 messages today? Did I click the play button to keep poverty away today? Did I do that work, right? And you can see that day in, day out. The second one that we need is our engagement rate. Our engagement rate is going to be how good is your first message, right? And this is simply a percentage between the initial message sent and the response received. That's your engagement rate. Next one is your response received. How many people actually responded based on how many messages you sent? And then we move to nurture rate. This is that rate of how good your setting skills are if you're looking to book calls, right? So this is another really huge one. This basically is the process of taking the amount of calls that were booked divided by how many responses you got. That's what your nurture rate is, and that's why it sits as the fourth item here in this flow. And of course, you have the call booked, which is the amount of people that actually booked the call. And then from there, you have your closed rate, which is how good are your sales skills, right? And this is how many people purchased divided by how many people booked the call with you. And then lastly is purchase number of clients, which is going to be that piece. And the last one that is there is our how long did this pipeline take to perform, which is that where it says 0 days. That's the one that's in green. So let's break this down. When you come to optimizing this, we have to talk a little bit through this stuff. I want to talk about the ranges that I think everybody needs to have. Now, Chris and I have been at this game for a pretty long time, and over a million different DM conversations, the acceptable engagement rate range that we found to crush deals. Now, when I say crush deals, I'm talking about Chris and I had a just under 16% engagement rate on a flow that we were running in a previous life. And we did $104,000 in 40 days from zero, no group, no list, no anything. We just had this pipeline flow and we were doing 16% engagement. I have seen engagement as high as 60%, 62% was like the highest one I've ever seen. So the acceptable range is where you want to shoot first. This is your benchmark. So whenever you set up your pipeline, you want to make sure that your first series of messages are hitting that 15 to 40% accept rate, engagement rate. Next one is the nurture range. What we're looking for here in a nurture range is 25% or more will be a solid amount of nurture to call bookings. And then your close rate. Got to ask yourself right now, as you're listening to me talk about this, what is your close rate? Do you know what it is? Can you succinctly tell me, like, Sean, I close at X amount and I know that every single day? If you don't know that number, that's okay. You can use our reporting to pull it for yourself, right? As long as your metrics are being tracked and everything's being done. But this gives you a very clear idea on, what's happening. And then lastly is that when there's first message to new deal. And what we're focused on here is making this as few days as possible. Obviously, we're looking for speed and velocity of deals. And so having it set up in exactly this format gives you the ability to not only compare platforms, and you could say, if you have one for Facebook and you have one for TikTok and then Instagram and LinkedIn, and you had all the same metrics, you could easily tell where the cash is sitting. And that's the cool part, right? There's a couple of pro tips that I want to just share with us, and we'll get a little bit further into it. But number one, the minimum effective dose, right? So if you have those metrics set up, just kind of like I shared, I walked through, we want to send about a minimum of 50 people through that pipeline so that we can get an accurate reading on whether or not you've hit the benchmarks. Now, if you haven't hit the benchmarks, that's where we start. We're going to go back and I'll share about that in a second. But again, 50 people through a pipeline is the minimum effective dose. Secondly, accurate reporting is based on quantity. The sample size that we're using, like I said, you want to start with 50 people and then do this one step at a time. What I mean by that is, number one, build your thing out, put your tracking in there, and then start running the flow and achieve the benchmarks. Get to those rates that I just shared with you. Secondly, if you're not there, this gives you a way to simply easily troubleshoot. I'm going to show you one live that we use all the time here in a second. So if we go back and we say, okay, well, I'm not in this range, like let's get that optimized first. And then we start comparing to the other platforms. And then we can continue Kaizen, constant improvement to get it to where it needs to go. And of course, now you have this option to choose the best platform. If you see like your Facebook is cranking versus your LinkedIn isn't, and you're putting more time in LinkedIn, then it might be time to say, let's go across a platform because I can see that just my messaging that's already there, it's closer. I can put my energy here and I can get results faster. That's kind of the idea. And then lastly is we have the review part of the process here. So in review, check this out. Rome wasn't built in a day. So if you don't have this stuff set up, don't worry, it's okay. Just know that there is this next step of how do you optimize the whole system? Because guys, I promise you, when you optimize a prospecting system using FlowChat or whatever system you might be using, hopefully it is FlowChat, And you get this thing like continually being refined on a week in, week out basis, you're going to see some tremendous results. So again, it always takes consistent, continual refinement. And if you don't have a place to review your metrics, put one on your calendar and stick to it, right? Because if you do this week in, week out, your business will continue to grow. So here's your challenge. What I've just shared with you is, I think, life-changing. And my question is, will you take action? Because a lot of people see this stuff and they're like, oh, Sean, that's great. Never going to do it. Or maybe they start doing it and then they don't do the continual refinement part. Or maybe they don't optimize, or maybe they don't hit the benchmarks, right? Like, again, it's all about you taking action and you doing the thing. And here's the example I was going to share with you. This is one of our live pipelines that we run into a Facebook group, right? This is the timeline that I set in our reporting screen was from January 1st to 31st. I'm going to walk through our numbers specifically for you so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Our engagement rate, it dropped below 15% in January. In December, it was actually 17%, and it was in the range, but it dropped down below 15% in January. So what did I do? I could immediately see, looking at all my metrics, that, oh my God, our first messages are not in the range. This is costing us lots of money. So I dug in and I told my team to update our first message, right? Then we look at our nurture rate, 31%. The target is 25% plus. We're on target. Don't have to think about it. I keep going. Next one, booking rate, 148%, Sean. What the heck? Well, guess what? There was 23 booking links that were sent in January, but there was 34 booked calls. How can that be? Because when you do this consistently, the system compounds on itself, because there was a lot of other booking links that were sent before the timeline of January 1st. So in December and November and those months prior to January, we sent other booking links, and timing is real. So people, the booking links are out there, and you can see that more book calls were done than booking links were sent. That's just because it compounds on itself. So we had 34 book calls, which is great. And check that out. Close rate, our team closing rate. Now I have a sales team, is 62%. What if your nurture sequence was so good that your business could close at 62%, right? That's insane. And then lastly, look at this. This pipeline for us, it takes 11.96 days from the first message being sent to a closed deal. And this is down from 20 days to 11 days in a single month. So what did we do, right? Our continual improvement and our continued refinement was from December to January. We messed up our first message, but we beefed up the nurture in our pipeline, and we changed a few of our questions that we were asking, and that caused the collapse of time when the deals came. So this is how you start to really continue to optimize these types of flows, and they're really powerful when you do it this way. This is great. Here's the result. When you get it right, you can book out a calendar. This was my calendar a month ago in February for the week of that. And I can show you week behind week after week after week. It looks very similar to this. This one particular week, I had 17 sales calls. What would your business do or grow? How would it change if you had 17 sales calls and your close rate was 62%? Come on, guys. What are we talking about, right? And it also booked me a group presentation, of which I got a chance to go present to like 50 people on a live, just from doing that one flow. This is the reason why Chris and I and Bruno have never had to pay for any advertising or SEO or PPC or anything, because when you constantly stay focused on this, you can turn it on and off like a light switch, right? I wasn't even I recently let go of one of my sales pros on January 10th. And I stepped into the sales seat on January 15th. And so from January 15th until today, my calendar has looked like this until I find the next sales pro that we're going to bring on board. But that's it. That's what I'm saying, is like, that's what's possible. As promised, I've just shared with you guys exactly how you can set up custom reporting in 3 clicks to identify gaps and optimize your targeting strategy. In 1 click, all you have to do is go and review that report once you get it set up. Pretty simple. And today's achievements, guys: using metrics equals cash flow. If you don't know how well your organic method is working, or your organic flow, inbound, outbound, whatever, if you don't have those right hinge points or metrics or KPIs, as most people call them, and you don't understand what you're shooting for, you got to have a benchmark, and then you got to try to beat the benchmark. That equals cash flow. Secondly, split test platforms. That's what this training was all about today. I did show you how to optimize on one platform, but if you have multiple platforms that you're optimizing, and depending on how big you want to go, this will give you the ability to choose to say, look, my messaging, the way that I am, the way that I've written my flows seems to just work better on LinkedIn. I'm not going to start pouring energy into Facebook. I'm going to move all my energy to LinkedIn. And now you're getting bigger bang for your buck, because what it comes down to is the least effort for the max results. That's what we're all looking for. With that said, let's go FlowChat. And that's all I have for you today.